If you don't have enough money, you're not supposed to try to push to make more money, because then you become materialistic and then you're somehow less spiritual because you're focusing on the material instead of the spiritual. And that's all fucking bullshit, you guys. You're the one that you've been looking for. And I'm just here to remind you of that. I've created this channel to learn things and then to share them with you. What's up, you guys? Glad to have you back. I'm your host, Keith, your man of letters, here to bring you knowledge, information, and entertainment. With that being said, let's get preliminaries. Check me out on Instagram, Man of Letters Official. Check out my book. It's called 7 Pillars, A Handbook for Existence, written by Keith Garcia. Based on the Hermetic philosophy, some of the dark sides of spirituality, some of the things to be warned about when it comes to spirituality. Try not to get caught up in the dark. This video can be an hour long, but I'll try to keep it concise. Forgive me if I ramble a little bit. Spiritual dogma is just as useless and unnecessary as dogma of any other creed. Cultural dogmas, educational, scientific dogmas, religious dogma, they're all the same. Anytime you take something as truth without actually doing your research or verifying or cross-referencing or even using your common sense to think, does that make sense or not, is too much. So the first thing is this idea of intuition. In spirituality, there's just go with your gut every time. Just don't think. It hates thinking. Anytime you think, you're doing something wrong in spirituality. Don't think, just go with your gut. And that's bullshit, you guys. Intuition is a real thing. And you should use your intuition. But you should also know when your intuition is not your intuition. In my book, there's 2 studies that I use, and there's countless others, where people are tricked into making decisions thinking they're using their intuition, when in fact they've been guided to make a certain decision. One example is they had people sit down at a desk, gave them a pen, said, hey, write down the first 3 fruits that come to your mind. Depending upon the colors in the room and the objects around them, they were able to consistently alter people's answers. They said, hey, use your intuition. The person said, okay. It wasn't their intuition that they were using. It was their intuition based on their surrounding area. They were influenced, thinking they were making a decision of their own volition, and they were not. Guys, do not always go with your intuition. Don't always trust your intuition. Use it, practice it, but get to know it. Make sure you're being smart about shit. Anytime someone tells you to never think, tell them to go screw themselves, right? You shouldn't always be living in your head, but you shouldn't always be living from your gut. Which brings me to the number 2 thing that I really warn you guys against when going down the spiritual path, is getting caught up with ultimatums. Always avoid negative vibrations because they lower your vibration, and the goal is to ascend. First of all, we live in an infinite universe. You're not going to ascend to get to oneness, back to source, because you can go up forever. You can ascend forever. We live in infinity. We live in the mind of the creator, and the mind is infinite. You can't just start floating up and be like, oh my god, there's God. Like, it doesn't work that way. We will get pulled back into oneness internally. We'll be sucked back into it. That's how it's going to happen. So when someone says avoid all negative emotions, like fear, people hate on fear. Without fear, you kidding me? Fear has been one of the most useful emotions humans, if not the most useful emotion for humans as of this date. The fear of watching your children starve and die in front of your eyes, or watching your children get sick and die in front of your eyes, or getting sick and dying yourself, even getting your throat ripped out by a saber-toothed tiger. Hell, dying from a couple of ant bites that get infected are all driving factors to why people have created agriculture and farming, so we don't have to starve to death anymore. Or medicine, so that we don't have to die from flea bites anymore. Whether the medicine's coming from the west or whether it's coming from the old world east when you're picking herbs in the mountain. Doesn't matter which side of the spectrum you're on. Fear drives us, fear of mortality. fear of loneliness. Fear isn't a bad thing. Here's what they don't teach you, or at least what I wasn't taught. Guys, this is coming from my perspective, right? What I've experienced in the spiritual community. The name of the game is identifying which emotion is useful, or what quality of energy is useful in any given situation. Anger is an exceptionally useful emotion for me. Hey, I'll give you a good example. If I work a day job that I don't really want to be at, and I say I work 5 days in a row, 8 hours a day, and my life is dominated by something that I don't like doing, I lose it. I get really fucking angry. I get really frustrated. And that anger leads me to do things to become autonomous. Starting my Etsy shop. I sell ritual candles and beeswax candles, and I distill my own oil. All these things are driven a lot in part by the anger I have when I come home from work and I go, I haven't put any time into my dreams. Fuck. So I come home and I write books, and I start YouTube channels, and I start teaching, and I start using my skills and refining them so that I can make money off of them, so that I can break off from the regular things of the world and get into things that really make me stoked on life. But here's the thing. I don't act until I'm angry. And it takes a lot for me to get angry. So you can see the pickle. You can see the conundrum that I'm in. But if things are comfy day in and day out, and everything's going my way and everything's smooth and I'm just letting the world happen to me and being super passive, I don't get shit done. And then because this has happened to me before, where 5 years have gone by and I've been perfectly comfortable and I'm meditating every morning and I'm doing yoga at sunset and it's great, but I don't feel like I've accomplished anything. And that's a negative in the spiritual world. Because you're not supposed to be ambitious. You're supposed to be happy with just is. And if you want more, then there's something wrong with you, because you shouldn't want to want more. It's a negative thing to want more. You're supposed to be okay with what you have. You're supposed to be complacent with the way that things are. If you don't have enough money, you're not supposed to try to push to make more money, because then you become materialistic and then you're somehow less spiritual because you're focusing on the material instead of the spiritual. And that's all fucking bullshit, you guys. Most word is just bullshit. It's parroted information. They got it from one YouTuber who said it, and because he or she had a shit ton of subscribers, that meant it was the word of the Lord, and it was passed down, and then every other multitude of social influencer pops up saying the same dogmatic information, not because they believe it, but because they do believe it. But they believe it because someone told them to believe it. Not because they actually did the investigating on their own. Not because they applied these teachings to their own reality. Not because they cross-referenced these teachings with everything else that's going on in existence. They just take it for truth and preach it to other people. That's dogma. That's why what I study is called a Hermetic philosophy. It's not spirituality. It's not a religion. It's not a cult. It's not a group. It's a philosophy. Mechanics of the universe. Not good or bad, not how to ascend to the next level, not how to change dimensions, not how to talk to the dead or how to cultivate certain plants to do certain things or meditate visually for magical cars and unicorns and shit. It's none of that. Not that that stuff doesn't have any value, but just because where spirituality has gone today, which is why it's become so dogmatic, is because there's a source of information. Like think of a tree. When you get to the trunk of a tree, it's just usually one solid trunk. It's the heart, it's home base. And then you get the branches, which branch out a little more. And then the branches branch out into even smaller branches. And then those tiny branches grow a bunch of leaves on the end of them. So by the time you go from the one trunk to the tips of the leaves, you now could possibly have 100,000 different moving parts in some of the bigger trees, right? What we're seeing in spirituality today is each one of those leaves, which is its own individual identity, says this is what spirituality is. And it talks about the leaf. But there's 50,000 other leaves on the end of the tree. What the Hermetic philosophy does is it comes back down the leaf, and it comes back down the branches, and it comes back into the trunk of the tree, back to source, where everything extends from. No dogma, no jargon, no conversations over angels are bad, or angels are actually demons, or demons are actually fallen angels, or the Sumerians are good or bad, or the Pleiades this, or the Arcturians that. Shout out to my fellow Arcturians out there, by the way. Or any of this. All those conversations are very subjective, and they're very dogmatic, and they're very overused, and very understudied. I get this impression from the spiritual world that this will be the last one. I kind of digressed a bit, but we'll reel it in. We're going to reel it in, you guys. So, the last one is this almost abrasion, or this almost friction between masculine and feminine. Spirituality tends to be exceptionally, extremely, overabundantly feminine based, which is super unbalanced and super unreasonable. I'm subscribed to a ton of spiritual Instagrams. Probably 90% of my Instagram following are people who are in the spiritual realm, into witchy occult shit, sorcerers. I swear to God, 95 out of every 100 posts that I come across that involve qualities of energy relating to masculine and feminine, it's feminine dominated. Example: we have to be gentle on ourselves, soft on ourselves. We have to go slow. We have to be easy and gentle. These are all passive traits. They're not good and they're not bad, as I'm sure you know. So traditional spiritualists would say there's no such thing as good or bad. But when I say there's no such thing as good or bad, what I mean is that there's no such thing as good or bad statically. Like, one thing can be good and it can be bad, and depending upon what situation you use it in, it will be good or bad, objectively speaking, right? So being passive is objectively good, empirically good in a certain amount of situations, and being passive is objectively, empirically bad in other situations. True knowledge is knowing when and where to use what type of quality. Masculine is projecting. Masculine is your willpower. It's force. It's focus. It's singular, right? It's focused because it's singular. It's singular because it's focused. To focus on something, you have to hone in on it. Like staring at this candlelight. I'm focused on this and only this. And the more I become focused on this candlelight, the less I understand about what's going on around me. So while I can get lost in an exceptionally deep meditative state by concentrating very hard on this candle flame, I also lose complete awareness to my surrounding area, right? So when I lose focus of the candle and I kind of look through the candle and I'm not focusing on anything, I can see the camera, I can see my dream catcher, I can see the images on the tapestry behind the candle, I can see clothes on the ground, I can see recording of my audio software to my lower left on the floor, I can see all these things, right? So that's the difference between masculine and feminine. Masculine is direct and focused, feminine is open and receptive. Neither one is good or bad, you guys, but spirituality is dominated by soft and gentle, whereas masculine would be the opposite, rough and hard. Projecting out is your masculine, taking in is your feminine. It's just what's useful, and you're not taught that in spirituality, and it's the biggest loophole, because the problem that happens with being too passive is that you don't speak up for yourself. You have trouble speaking your mind. You have trouble with confrontation. You shy away from things that are overpowering to you. People who are overly receptive tend to be people who are dominated by other people's wills. So never having ideas of your own, or never having direction on your own, or always having to be validated by external forces, because again, you're waiting for the input of the external force telling you, is it good or is it bad? Hey, you're looking to there, give me answers, you tell me, you project to me, you tell me, you project to me. So when we're constantly looking outward for answers is when we're constantly trapped in our feminine. Right? Sometimes you gotta leave yourself to get answers from other people. I do that shit all the time. It's how I learn how to play music. It's how I learn how to make candles. It's how I learn how to do most things, is by going outside of myself and getting the help. But sometimes when I'm making big life decisions, do I go left? Do I go right? Do I buy this? Do I buy that? Do I make this investment or do I not? And I can't really get a satisfying idea from the outside. I have to make a decision. And I have to make a decision. I have to be clear and I have to be confident in that definition, and it has to come from me and not from anyone else. And that's masculine. Sometimes situations call for that. So that was the third one. I can't even go back. I think the first one was your intuition. Make sure you know it's your intuition and you're not being fucking manipulated into thinking it's your intuition. The second one is, I can't remember what the second one was. The third one was spirituality being overly feminine. And I know that sounds biased because I'm a guy, but I tend to be more of a feminine guy than masculine, right? And feminine has nothing to do with man or woman. A little bit to do with man or woman, but talking about feminine as womanhood or womanly is about as crude as you can define femininity. Femininity is about a quality of energy, creativity, abstract thinking. That's all creative. That's all feminine. Being able to put something together from nothing using only thought alone is pure abstract. It's pure feminine. Now, when you take a pen and you put it to paper and you put your thoughts on and you say, step 1, buy a ton of bricks. Step 2, hire 2 employees. That's your masculine. You're taking a whole bunch of things and you're defining it. You're putting it in order, making it linear, making it logical. The goal with creation in life is, with anything, is to have a balance of healthy masculine and feminine coming together to birth something new, like a man and a woman. You have the man's sperm, the seed that gets projected out, the masculine side. You have the woman's uterus that takes the seed in, right? The receptive takes the information in, that's the feminine side, and then creates. But you need them both. You need both the seed and the egg to come together. And this happens with your thoughts. If you want to write a book, if you want to build a house, if you want to reinstill a new habit, if you want to break old habits, there's ways of doing it. There's ways of action that make the most sense and ways of action that make the least sense. It's not about good or bad. It's not about never acting in anger because anger is a bad thing and it's going to lower your vibration. It's not always about acting from your highest excitement, because some of y'all are just fucking adrenaline junkies, and acting from your highest excitement isn't useful, because excitement a lot of the times isn't useful. Sometimes excitement is too projecting. It's too much energy wasted. Sometimes you have to reel that energy in, reel the excitement in, so that you can act smoothly and calmly and stoically, right? But back to what I've been saying this whole time, it's all about balance, and it's all about knowing when to use what certain types of qualities. So I think that's about it. Thanks, you guys, for hanging out with me. I'm Keith, your host, your man of letters. Feel free to subscribe. I would love it. Take it easy. Thanks for being here.